Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the application of project management principles and skills in agriculture. I know most people might be asking, why are you talking about this? I can tell you, project management can also be applied in agriculture. This is like any other environment. So in this particular video, I'm going to take you through the process of applying, or when to apply and how to apply project management skills in agriculture. So let's move on. The other day, I was visited by a relative at my place, and this relative is actually a farmer. He has got a farm some 120 kilometers from the nearest town. So when this relative of mine approached me, the intention was to get advice on how best you can manage some of the farm activities or some of the agricultural activities that he was involved in. So we discussed more in terms of how was he approaching the agriculture process. For him, he was very clear to say he was approaching it as a business, which was a very important point. So some of the questions I was asking him is based on what I've seen in agriculture. Most of the crops and most of the livestock, actually, they have a specific period. By specific period, I mean, for example, if you're talking of crops, there's a point when you actually create the, there's a point when you actually seed the crops, you also cultivate, and then you also harvest. It has got a time period. So this, hope they are enjoying the video so far. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button, so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. A relative of mine requested me to accompany him to his farm. That was a good gesture. I accepted. I paid the courteous travel. So when we reached there, he started telling me a lot of challenges he was actually facing with his farming activities. And one of the challenges he was highlighting is that the seed was not coming on time. Sometimes the labor is not available. He tries to look for some equipment, he could not find it. And when it comes to harvesting time, it was also very difficult for him to get transporters from his farm to the market. And also the market price, he was not sure, it was always fluctuating. So he has been in this farming business for almost 3 years. So based on the presentation of those problems to me by the relative of mine, who is a farmer, I'm going to call him a farmer throughout this project. I'm going to call him a farmer throughout this video. So I started asking so many questions to him in terms of how does he actually do the planning of the cultivation, because he's mostly on the cropping side, on the fast-moving crops like potatoes, onions, cabbages, and so on and so forth. So I started asking him some basic questions. How do you plan when you want to start your season? I was actually surprised. He was just giving me some basic understanding of planning. And I was even asking him, how do you actually make sure that the labor is available when you need it? And he was also giving me some basic answers also to that. Then I realized there was actually a lack of project management principles being applied in agriculture. So I decided to do this particular video to address some of the challenges that are faced by farmers, and also to present that it's also possible, and it's quite important to apply, besides the farming skills that you might have acquired, it's also important to apply the project management skills and principles in agriculture. So in this particular video, I'm going to cover so many areas. Let me take you through the areas that I'm going to cover, okay? If you look at what we have here, this is what we're going to cover, okay? So I'm going to take you through one by one on what we're going to cover. So the first one is to understand the importance of management in agriculture, or the importance of project management in agriculture. So most farmers, they make this mistake of not understanding project management principles. They assume that the fact that they've managed to understand agricultural skills and they've attained so many certifications, they've employed the best labor in their farms, therefore everything else should just work as articulated. However, you will find that if you don't apply proper project management skills in agriculture, your yield and even the way you run it as a business, it may not be very profitable. So to uncover the importance of project management in agriculture, okay? Then the second point, we're also going to cover on how the project management principles can be applied to agriculture throughout the process of your, either it's livestock or it's crop farming that you're going to take. Then, the third one, we're also going to look at the examples of how project management can be applied in agriculture, okay? That is very, very important. Of course, after going through these examples, the last part we're going to look into is to identify what tools and techniques can you use in agriculture. That is very, very important. Tools and techniques that you can use in agriculture as a project. So that is what we are going to cover in this particular video. Let's move on. So you might be asking, why is it important that we need project management in agriculture? I'm going to cover that in this particular section of the video. So this is what we're going to cover in this particular section of the video. We're going to cover why we need projects in agriculture, or why project management is very important in agriculture. So there are certain points we're going to look at. One of them is, does agriculture involve any stakeholders? Yes. So from project management principles, stakeholder management is very important. There's actually a cycle of stakeholder management in project management. So one of them is to identify the stakeholders. You should be able to identify the stakeholders to your agricultural activities. You should be able to also evaluate and also understand your stakeholders. What is it they need? What are you supposed to do? So by stakeholder, we are talking of anyone who might be interested in your agriculture activities. It could be your labor, it could be local board, or it could be the regulator, it could be even police, it could be even health officials. So those are what we are calling stakeholders. So you should be able to identify them, you should be able to understand them in terms of what communication do they need, how do you involve them, at what point are you going to also involve them. Then you also need to prioritize these particular stakeholders in agriculture. How do we prioritize? Say for example, you know that you have a cropping season, you also have the cultivation season, you also have the harvesting season. So you prioritize your stakeholders based on those specific stages. It's also very, very important. Then you also need to start monitoring your stakeholders. You have planned for them, you have identified them, you have understood them. Now you need to start planning for them. Say for example, you are involved in agriculture for potatoes. Obviously, that's a health-related crop. You want to make sure all the required chemicals, they are applied and they are not harmful either to the environment or even to the ultimate consumer. So that is very, very important. We're also going to look at seasonal constraints in agriculture, okay? So project management skills can also be applied in agriculture because they have constraints. And even if you are documenting any project management activities, you also need to document constraints. So you find that mostly for agriculture, you have seasonal constraints that can even affect your planning, they can even affect your yield, they can even affect any other activities like weeding and so on and so forth. It's quite important that you also manage agriculture activities as a project. It must have all the stakeholders identified, with the constraints also identified. You also have to look at resource limitations and even the careful coordination that is required. There is no way you can run an agricultural activity without resource limitations. You always find some resource limitations. It could be resource in terms of labor, it could be resource in terms of fuel to be used by equipment in the field. It could be even resource in lack of even the equipment that you need. Or even the water that you're going to use for your, say for example, irrigation or anything that you're going to use in that field. So resource limitation is also going to be part of agriculture. And therefore, if you try to look at how project management is actually done, you also have to manage the resources. It's very unusual to find a project where the resources, they are unlimited. In most cases, you find they are limited. So in agriculture also, you have limited resources in terms of human and non-human resources. So it is also quite important that you understand that. Then the last part is also on understanding the project management efficiency and also management of outcomes. In agriculture, you want to be as efficient as possible. Otherwise, you might produce substandard crops, substandard livestock, which may not be required somewhere. So, in summary, what we are saying is we still need and we can still apply the project management skills, project management principles in agriculture. Why are we saying that? Most crops, they have a time limit. So, from the definition of a project, it must be a time-limited activity. So this one applies straight away in agriculture. For example, most crops, they have a time limit of 3 to 4 months before harvesting. So the principles of project management also apply. You now have a time limit. So that's first point to qualify to be a project. Then the second one is you want to produce either a product, a service, or a result. That is part of a definition of a project. So mostly in agriculture, you are producing a product. It's very unusual to produce a service, but in most agriculture activities, you produce a product. So that product, whether it's a crop, it's a livestock, it also forms part of the principles of project management, which is a temporary endeavor to produce a product, a service, or even a result. So looking at these two project management principles, it is very clear and it's very obvious that project management principles and also skills can still be applied in the agricultural sector. That is very, very important. So now let's move on to look at the characteristics of agricultural projects. So what we're going to cover is what we have on this particular item, okay? We are looking at time sensitive. We're also looking at influence by weather, and also we're looking at water, labor, and equipment. So the main characteristics of agricultural projects is that it is time sensitive due to planting and also investing in harvesting cycles. So it is very important that you manage your agricultural activities as a project. Time sensitivity. There are certain crops you just have to plant them once a year. There are others you just have to do them throughout the year. So it's time sensitive. If you don't pay particular attention to time in agriculture, you always have problems. Then also agriculture is normally influenced by weather and climate. So in project management principles, that is actually a risk. If someone was going to ask, what are specific risks that you should expect in an agricultural project? One of them is the climate and also the weather. That is normally unpredictable. And it can also affect your youth. It can also affect your agricultural activities. Then the second one also is, it involves a lot of labor, water, and even management. I have so many projects failing because the owners, they want to run it with a cell phone. They are calling, asking, how far have you gone? Or have you done this? Have you completed this? In most cases, that affects the yields and also the quality of the crops or the livestock that you are working on. So it's always advisable that you manage those items like your water, availability, your labor, management, equipment. You make sure that everything is available. Hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. Hope you're enjoying the video. So in this part of the video, we are going to look at the examples of agricultural projects. So one of the examples of the agricultural projects is the irrigation scheme and also development, as well as crop production and also initiatives. You also have farm mechanism or mechanization programs, and also livestock development programs that you can also have, and also the agricultural value chain where you produce your products, someone is going to process them into some end products. For example, the way you buy your potato crisps from offices, obviously it has been produced somewhere and then someone had to process it through the value chain until it becomes the crisps that you are going to eat. So that is also very important. So these are the examples where agricultural projects can be applied. That is so. In this section of the video, we are going to look at the project life cycle in agriculture so that you can understand why we should apply project management skills and also project management principles in agriculture. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to cover all this action, which is project initiation, project planning, execution, monitoring, and also project closure. It's very important. Like I said earlier, agriculture fits very much into project management definition, which is an endeavor to produce, a temporary endeavor to produce a product, a result, or even a service. So it also fits into this life cycle. So let's go through one by one. The initiation phase of agriculture activities, which we're going to cover in this part of the video. It's very important in agriculture that you are also able to identify any problems or any opportunities in a project or in an agricultural project. So, for example, You want to identify the issue to do with resource acquisition, equipment, seed, fertilizer, for example, and even pesticides, which are also very, very important. You want to conduct feasibility studies to see how things are going to come out. Are you going to win or not? You still need to identify your stakeholders during the initiation part of it. And also, like any other project, you create a charter, project charter, which is going to define the scope and also the expected outcomes from that agricultural project. So it is very, very important that you understand all these initiation activities that you have to do during the agricultural activities. In this section, we are going to cover the planning of agricultural projects. It's very, very important that if you're a farmer, you actually create or develop a project plan for a cropping season. If it's animal husbandry, for example, you also want to plan from the beginning all the way up to the market. So developing a project plan for agricultural projects is very, very important and should always be done by every farmer. Okay. You also need to identify the resources. For example, seeds, fertilizer. You want to also identify budgets, and you're also planning, you're also risk assessment. So all the planning activities that can be done to, and whether it's software project, whether it's construction project or research and development project, you can still apply the same principles to an agricultural project. So planning of agricultural projects goes through the same cycle like another project. I've seen so many project managers suggesting that when you're doing agricultural projects, you don't need to do planning because it has got so many risks. I can tell you that is not the correct way of looking at it. Even if there might be so many risks, but as a farmer, you also have to make sure you have identified the stakeholders, you have all the you have also the resources, you have also budget, you have also done risk assessment, you have developed a plan so that you're able to follow in terms of, say, for example, you're going to require to acquire additional chemicals or pesticides for your agricultural projects. Definitely there's going to be some time you need to go into the procurement process of project management. So that is very, very important that you also need to consider a project, you also need to consider an agricultural project like another project. So, in project management, it's very normal and very easy in some cases or in some projects to come up with a work breakdown structure, which we normally call WBS. The same also applies to agriculture. In this section, we are going to cover the work breakdown structure for agricultural projects, which is very, very important when it comes to agricultural projects. So how do we do that? The first one is we look at land preparation. It's very important. Land preparation is very important in agriculture. Like I was saying earlier, this relative of mine, he was actually more into cropping than livestock. So land preparation was very, very important. And it also depends on the equipment that we have, the weather patterns, the climate, the type of soil, and so on and so forth. So land preparation is one of the items you can put in your work breakdown structure. Then the second one, preparation, is on the seed procurement. So when you are done with your land preparation, you also need to acquire the seeds that you are going to plant. I can tell you, most of the farmers, they don't do it in the same season. I've seen others starting to procure seeds for the next season in this season. So it's not always that you should procure the seeds in the same season. Some they do it for 2 or 3 years, depending on the type of seed. Some seeds can even survive for 4 or 5 years. So seed procurement is also one of the work breakdown structure item that you should include. Then after seed procurement, you also have planting. Planting is like execution. This is like execution of a project. So it's expected that all the project execution activities in a project, they are also part of this project management in agricultural projects. So when you are saying planting, you're already executing the project. You need labor to plant, you need equipment to plant, you also need the seed to plant. Sometimes you also need even fertilizer to plant. So that is also very important. You also have fertilizer application, you also have pest control, harvesting, and also storage and distribution. Harvesting is very important. If you're running agricultural projects as a business, definitely you need a market to buy your crops. So that is why I'm saying harvesting is very, very important. You need to make sure that when you're harvesting, you reduce what is called waste. You don't waste a lot of your crops when you're harvesting. Also, when you're taking your products to the market, you get the correct price. so that you don't make a loss from your business activities or from agricultural projects. So it's very, very important that harvesting, you do it properly. Also your storage. I've seen some other crops, if you harvest them first, you store them, and then you take them to the market. There are others like potatoes and cabbages, you actually harvest them, and then you take them straight to the market. I'll show you one of the videos when I visited this farm of a relative of mine, and then you can understand what I'm talking about in terms of application of project management principles and skills in agriculture. So let's move on. So the next stage is scheduling in agricultural projects. We are also going to look at all these other items. So like any other project, scheduling is very, very important. You want to be able to identify the activities, you want to be able to identify the duration, you want to be able to identify the start and end dates. So the same also applies to agricultural projects. Agricultural projects, you want to schedule. When are you going to get the first seeds? When are you going to get the first activities to plant? When are you going to do the first activities of fertilizer application? When are you going to do the first harvesting, storage, and all the way up to the market? So you can also still use the different project management tools that we have, like the Gantt charts, for example. You can also use, you can also check dependencies. You can also look at critical paths in terms of agriculture projects. So the whole activities of project management skills and also practice can also be applied to scheduling in agriculture. So the next section is also on the resource management in agriculture projects. So in agriculture, there are so many resources being involved, and one of them is labor. You cannot run away from that. We call it human resources. Then the other one is equipment. You need equipment for your agricultural projects and activities. And also, you also need machinery. There are some cases where you need machinery, either to prepare the seed, either to prepare the seed, or you need machinery either to prepare the harvested crops, or even to process the harvested crops, to process the livestock meat that you have already produced in agricultural projects. So those resources, they also need to be managed. The way we also manage in other projects like software, we also apply the same principles in agriculture. Say, for example, you want to level your resources, you can still do the same. You also need to make sure the land and water resources, they are also all managed. So it's very, very important that you consider resource management in agriculture. So this section of the video, we're going to look at budget management. There is no way you can run a project in agriculture without budgeting, because obviously you're going to spend some money, you're going to receive some revenue. So therefore, it's also very important that you do budget management properly in agriculture. For example, cost estimation for inputs, it has to be budgeted. We are talking of equipment and labor costs, they also have to be budgeted. We are talking of transport and logistics, they also have to be budgeted. Monitoring project expenditures is very, very important. So always make sure that the way you manage another project in agricultural project is the same. There's no principle, there's no skill that you think is not necessary. All the expected activities should be done throughout the agriculture. So in this section, we're going to look at risk management in agricultural projects. This is very, very important. Like any other project, risk management is very, very important in agricultural projects. Remember, we spoke about risk in terms of unpredictable weather, unpredictable climate, or even unpredictable pests that can even affect your yield. So we are looking at some of the common risk management items that you might find in agriculture. For example, weather variability. We're also looking at pests and diseases. They can also affect your yield, market price fluctuations, and also supply chain disruptions. This can be disrupted by civil unrest, by weather, by even labor strikes, even transport issues, and so on and so forth. So when you're managing an agricultural project, you also have to make sure that the risk management principles of projects is also done. You identify your risks, you evaluate your risks. You can also create risk responses. You can even categorize your risks so that at least you understand what is actually done in a project. If you want to understand more about risk management in a project, I've created a video on risk management. You can also check it on my channel. So this section of the video, we are looking at monitoring and evaluation of agricultural projects. So it's very important that, like any other project, monitoring and control, it has to be done throughout the project. Don't wait for the last minute. Don't wait for an issue to come out and then you start monitoring and control. It has to be done all the way from the beginning up to the end. So in agricultural projects also, you need to do monitoring and evaluation. Whether it's still in initiation, we are doing planning, you are doing even execution of the project, or you're closing the project, monitoring and control is very important to make sure that you are following the best practice. You are also following what is required when it comes to project management. So what are we going to look at when we're monitoring and evaluating agricultural projects? In agricultural projects, we are looking at tracking crop yields and also productivity. Are we going to make it? Say, for example, per hectare, you're expecting 5 tons. You also need to continuously track in terms of how the crops are growing, in terms of how you are taking care of the crops or the livestock. Is it going to make it in terms of the number of, say, for example, kgs or number of pockets per hectare? So you also need to check. You also need to monitor the milestones in the project. For example, when you have managed to start or to complete seeding, that's a big milestone. You can also look at when you are done with your harvesting, that's a big milestone. Your storage, that's a big milestone. So, like any other project, you still need to create the milestone charter, project milestone charter. It's very, very important that you appreciate what is a project milestone charter. It makes everything very clear, especially if you are running agriculture as a business. You also need to evaluate your farmer adoption of new technology, new crops, even new chemicals, new activities or technology that is happening in agriculture. For example, now most people are now using AI even to monitor the yield in the field. So it's very, very important. You also need to measure the project impact. For example, there are some places where there's productivity is too much. For example, I've seen some other farmers producing wheat and producing almost 10% of the community's need or the town's need or the country's need. So you also need to appreciate and understand, if you don't monitor properly how you are going to impact, it could be the surrounding environment, it could be even the ozone layer, for example, it could be even the soil acidity. It's also very important that you monitor that. Hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button, so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. Hope you're enjoying the video. So this section, like we discussed earlier, we are going to look at stakeholder management. I can tell you, stakeholder management is a very important activity that must be done, whether a project member or a project manager, program manager. You need to understand stakeholder management. So what are we saying when we talk about stakeholder? A stakeholder is normally defined as anyone organization or group, any individual, organization or group that is going to be affected by the project, or that is perceived to be affected by the project. So they might not be directly affected, but they can be perceived to be affected by the project. So you have to identify those items. So how do we affect? When we say affect in project management, it could be positively affected or negatively affected. So all those ones become stakeholders. So how do we do that? There's a process of stakeholder identification. If you want to understand more about stakeholder management and identification, I have a full video which I created, which you can also watch on my channel. I also have the link in the description below. So what are the stakeholders? What are the key stakeholders in agricultural projects? We have the farmers, of course. I've seen some other farmers, they create a group so that when it comes to hiring some of these most expensive equipment like harvesters, they do together. So farmers, they can also be some of the stakeholders. We also have government agents. They are also stakeholders. They will normally monitor. They also supply and also support the farmers. They also support the farmers in their agricultural activities. We have agriculture extension officers who can advise. They normally come, they test your soils, what minerals do you have in the soils, what small insects do you have in the soil. Then they can advise what chemicals to use, the amount of water, and even if you're doing irrigation, they can even also intervene in terms of what type of irrigation are you supposed to use. Is it drip irrigation, or you're going to use the sprinkler irrigation? So that is also very, very important. You have also NGOs or development partners. I've seen some farmers being supported being sponsored by NGOs because, say, for example, in Africa, you find the NGOs, they're actually supplying some food items like beans, for example, sorghum, for example. So they have their own farmers that they might have. So it's called contract farming in terms of the agricultural terms. So project management can still be applied because you also identify those NGOs as also stakeholders. Then the last one we're looking at is the buyers and the market. It's very important. There's no way you can run agricultural projects without considering the market and also without considering the buyers and also the buyers as stakeholders. Because once you are done with your harvesting, you need your crops to be shared with the market, and based on the market price, you need your crops also to be purchased by buyers. So buyers are also very important stakeholders in agriculture. So now we are looking at technology in agricultural projects. Let's expand on this. This day and age, it's very normal and acceptable to apply technology to increase the yields in agriculture. So like another project, you also need to look at technology. Is it something that is going to be sustained for a long period? Is this something that is short-term? How are you going to make sure that everything is working according to plan? So let's look at different technology items that you can use. We have seen so many startups coming up with, say, for example, farm management software, okay? So it's very important that you use, like, for example, software. You can use it even for communication, okay? Communicating with your team, even communicating with any other agents like government, NGOs, and so on and so forth. So farm management software is also very important. Then we also have drones and crop monitoring. Drones are becoming more and more common in agriculture. They are being used for monitoring crops. They are also being used even for monitoring livestock. So it's very important that if your budget allows, you need to start thinking about drones for monitoring crops in your agricultural projects, okay? Then others, they also try to use satellites and forecasting. So this gives a broader information in terms of when are you expecting heavy rains? Are they going to be thunder? There's going to be lightning and so on and so forth. Is it going to be windy? So it's also very important that you utilize this technology on satellites and also on forecasting. Then we have mobiles for farmers. So mobile phones are very, very important, and they are now becoming part of our lives. You need a mobile phone as a farmer, either to give to your employees so that the communication becomes easy, or even to track or to install some software. Like, remember we spoke earlier about farming software or farming management software. You can also install it on your mobile phones and allow your employees to communicate with anyone in the world. So it's also very important that you apply technology into your agricultural projects. So, like I said earlier, we want to look at simple examples. We're not going to go into details, but just to give you examples on why agricultural projects, they can be run like another project in real life. So let's look at some of the case study examples. So these are some of the case study examples we are going to look at in this section of the video. So the first one is, you want to increase crop production. So the first thing you need to do probably is to do a feasibility study. And then you plan how to increase. Remember the definition of a project: temporal endeavor to produce a product, a service, or even a result. So in this case, you want to improve crop production, okay? So you also need to plan, because at the end of the day, the result is crop productivity has been increased. So that is very, very important to include. For example, you might want to say, I want to create, or I want to construct a dam or irrigation setup. You can also manage it as a project. These are all improvements to what you have. So like another corporate world, another business world, they might say, we have 5 products. Now we want to increase the products to 10 of them. They normally run it as a project. So it's the same. When you want to construct a dam, you also need to make sure that it's run as a project. You want to do irrigation setup, you also need to make sure that it's also run as a project. I believe you can now understand why project management skills and project management principles can still be applied to agriculture. Then you can also say, I want to increase productivity. How? Probably you want to cultivate better, you want to get a better seed, you want to change even your suppliers, and so on and so forth. So all these can still be run as a project. So it is also very important to appreciate that project management principles and project skills can still be applied to agricultural projects in a normal way, as if you're running a construction project, as if you're running a painting your house project, as if you're running even a software project, as if you're running your research and development project. That is quite important. So you could be asking, Oscar, why are we discussing this principles of, or application of principles of project management in agriculture? We're going to cover that in this particular section of the video. So we're going to look at the benefits of agricultural projects or project management skills in agriculture. So there are so many benefits that we can look at, okay? One of them is productivity or improved productivity. In most cases, if you want to improve productivity in a project environment or in an agricultural project environment, you need to identify so many things. Okay, what is going to be your end goal? What is the scope? What are the objectives? So you can also have increased productivity because you were able to run a project that was able to increase your productivity. For example, if you still remember from the previous slide, you had a project to construct a new dam. So which means in terms of your irrigation, it's going to be easy. So it's also very important. You can also benefit by applying project management skills and principles in agricultural projects on efficient utilization of resources. Whether it could be in planting, for example, we're talking about technology, or you're even talking of acquisition of a new equipment or machinery, it can also help in the utilization. You can also reduce project risks, or you can also reduce agricultural project risks by looking at different angles of crop cultivation. For example, if you are going to set up an irrigation system, it means you have reduced the risk of the weather. Assuming there's no enough water, at least you can cover up with your irrigation system. You can also increase income, like any other project. In most cases, some projects, especially to bring up a new product, is to increase revenue in a corporate environment. So also in an agricultural environment, you want to increase the farmer's income, which is very, very important. So how do we finally make sure that we are doing the best practice in applying these principles in agriculture? In this section of the video, we're going to look at how to apply the best practice in agriculture when it comes to agricultural projects. So the first one is to make sure that you engage your farmers early. Remember the stakeholder identification process we are talking about. Your farmers, they are also stakeholders. So if you engage them early, you get to understand what is required, what has to be done, and so on and so forth. Then you also use data-driven planning. This is very important. In other environment, forget about agriculture. Data-driven planning is always conclusive and is better than just estimating from a non-data-driven process. Then you also need to monitor progress regularly. This is also very, very important. And then the last one is also you adapt to your plans according to environment changes. Weather is going to change, climate is going to change, labor laws, they're going to change, government is going to change, and so on and so forth. So you also need to make sure that you're adapting to the new changes that is coming in a project. So what are the key takeaways from this video? These are the key takeaways that we are going to conclude as we looked into the agricultural projects or how to apply project management principles in agriculture. So if you want me to create more videos based on what we have discussed so far, or there's a concept or an idea that was not clear, you can reach out to me or you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. If you